My name's Ed Druitt. Welcome to Communicate. I'm on the panel for Communicate, so I hope you're all enjoying this week so far. I want to introduce Colin now. I met Colin back in 1999. I was doing some work experience at the BBC, working on a programme that some of you might remember called Watch Out. And this was an opportunity. It was on every Sunday as part of the Sunday evening sort of portfolio wildlife programme. They gave 3 hours to wildlife television on a Sunday, and Watch Out was a chance to, well, presenters such as Simon King and Chris Packham to engage with the viewer and show you how you could get out and see nature. Well, that was 14 years ago, and obviously a lot has changed since then. Technology's changed a lot since then. There's all the new technologies and digital media and what have you. And with so much information out there these days, we're always want to try and grab information very, very quickly in snapshots. And so that's become a real challenge for television to actually up their game and provide information and provide things relating to natural history that people can get and digest in a very short amount of time. In yesterday's late afternoon session, we saw 11 portfolios of different organisations showcasing what they've been doing. And many of those showed very short films that help just summarise and bring together what they've been talking about. And actually, probably when you went home yesterday, or perhaps in the next few days or so, those might be the images and the sounds that you actually remember the most out of the last few days or so. So I want to hand over to Colin now, who's going to be talking a little bit more about effective filmmaking and how we can make the best in terms of turning our stories into short, sharp films that are very effective and can get out to large audiences. Colin.
Thanks very much. Yeah, the microphone is working, and luckily the internet rebooted itself just in time for this. Hello, I am Colin Jackson. Can I have the next slide, please, on this one? If you were expecting this man, I'm sorry, it's not him. I'm significantly less good over the hurdles than this man is, although I do occasionally get his emails to the BBC, especially when he's presenting sports programmes. I've been invited to the Australian edition of Strictly Come Dancing when the Australian Olympics are on. Yeah. I would be rubbish at that, I have to say. So if you can move on to the next slide. I'm not used to asking somebody else to move a next slide for me. This is very strange. So as Ed said, my experience so far, I've worked on a raft of natural history programming. Began in Watch Out, a magazine format show. Moved on, did 3 or 4 series of The Really Wild Show, which again, another magazine format, making really interesting stuff in short form to go into a half-hour programme. Spring Watch, again, a massively live 1-hour programme, but if you break it down, what it is a show containing lots of small nuggets of information, either in film form or presentation form. I did Big Cat Diary, I've done Big Cat Live, and one of the things that we instigated off the back of Big Cat Live was we realised we had a full internet connection out there, and we used the entire mass of broadcast technology to do a show after Big Cat Live went out, just on the web, called Big Cat Raw. And that was really designed to get the audience involved with us. We knew from television that they wanted to be involved more, so we gave them a chance to sort of email us, ask us questions, and we did that purely on the web. And that went down so well that it morphed and metamorphosed into Spring Watch Unsprung, which you may well have seen, and that went full circle. That went from a way of grabbing a different audience online to a whole show on BBC Two, because the commissioners went, this is really good, interesting stuff, this is. Can we have it on the main channel instead? So weird how these sort of things come about. And I've done long hour shows. I've done Planet Earth Live as well, which was, you know, shall we say, slightly ambitious, you know, but we managed it as well. So that's sort of my back. And I think what I was trying to point out in short form filmmaking is that it's certainly not all about TV anymore, as Ed said. If you can move on to the next slide. Just to give you an idea, the Natural History Unit, as you know, is a big place. It produces lots of very well-known brands, but things that you might be less aware of about the types of things that we do. Frozen Planet, for instance, that had web-only content. That had stuff that was reaching out to an audience on the web off the back of the programme. And that allowed them, the team, to be able to use new technology in a way that would never be able to be used on broadcast television. And there's a little clip I'd just like to show possibly from there. I will try and rattle through this because I'm happy to take questions at any point. If you can just click on the Frozen Planet People link that's there. It takes us to a whole new web page. And if you click on Chad and Hunter, the far side on this area, And if you scroll through 3 layer right that bit, they'll find one which says wolves. If you hit play on this, and I'll probably just talk it through whilst Chadden's sort of explaining it. Chadden found himself filming a sequence on wolves for Frozen Planet, and had his mobile phone with him as well.
That
and
was possibly one of the most amazing wildlife encounters that I've ever experienced. We were watching a wolf right on the horizon. You could just make it out because of this cloud of geese above it. And then we noticed that it was trotting towards us. And then every time it would come over a rise, I was thinking, yeah, it's still coming towards us, still coming towards us. And then it got over the last ridge of sand. And it's incredible because it's an enormous animal. And I was watching it through binoculars going, oh my God, that wolf is absolutely coming to check me out. And so I was on the walkie-talkie saying, guys, I'm going to switch this walkie-talkie off. This wolf is coming directly towards me. And just put the walkie-talkie down and then watch this wolf just kind of go, and your heart is just pounding the entire time, because I've never had an experience with a predator that big just coming straight towards you. And it just came right up to within 10 meters, and put the binoculars down, and then I'm kind of like, I've got no camera besides my little point and shoot, and I pull it out and kind of like, hi wolf. So she'd kind of circle a bit to the left and then circle a bit to the right, and then just kept putting her nose in the wind and just desperately trying to get a whiff of who I was or what I was. But it was basically just 10 meters off from my feet. And it's just, the adrenaline is just pumping through you, because this wolf has just crossed kilometers of tundra just to become face to face with you. Yeah, that was an encounter I won't forget in a while.
Go back to the presentation. I think what I wanted to point out from that is that Frozen Planet, for all its huge budgets and mega series and the thing that you see on BBC One, obviously generates an awful lot of other stuff behind the scenes. Some of that you see in the making ofs off the back of it, but some of it never gets to air and would never have got to air on television before. But they're still shooting stuff, and they're shooting good short form content like that, because sort of what else do you do when you're stuck on Ellesmere Island with not a lot else to do? You may as well film a little story. And I think that encapsulates a little story, tells you something, gives you an insight into what's going on behind the scenes, shot on a mixture of mobile phone, and actually probably used a little bit of footage that some other cameramans filmed of the wolf. Whether that was the same wolf, I'm not entirely sure. But that reached an audience who may never have watched Frozen Planet, or it may have got to an audience through sharing that type of media content online, who may have brought them to watch Frozen Planet on broadcast transmission. So I think short form content can do two things. It can give you an opportunity to put it out there in different platforms, but it can also bring people to your main message. The other things we do beyond TV, there's a live concert thing that uses natural history footage and live orchestra that goes around the UK. Springwatch has probably been discussed endlessly here, but that's a really good example of how we morph short form content, different platforms in and across across multiple platforms. So there's a Flickr group for people to get involved with and take photos for us. There is there's short form content that exists only on the web page for it. And that does exactly the same thing as that wolf clip will do. It will bring people in, get people involved. Personally, I don't. There is a stats thing that does work that online on the BBC, and certainly you can find one of the key metrics. I'll come to YouTube in a second. Is one of the things that YouTube really value when they're looking at content. Because I also started one of the things I forgot to mention, which is hopeless. I also launched the BBC's first original YouTube channel on natural history. So I was involved in what they really value is content linking to other content. So taking people to it. So when you come to the end of a YouTube video, you'll see that sort of mixture of clips. And they can measure how many people are clicking through from one link to the other. And your content gets scored in YouTube's own algorithm based on how much it also pushes people through the YouTube platform. So there's metrics abounding in that sort of neck of the woods, but suffice to say, it does make a difference, I think. How much it makes a difference on the BBC side of things, because the BBC site is relatively small compared to YouTube, but I think we need to be out there making that content and putting them in that place. So if we can move on to the next slide, there's another thing as well, it's not all about TV. Again, Walking with Dinosaurs, another classic example, a brand that's gone into stage arena shows. BBC Earth have made a theme park effectively in Japan. And we've got, you know, online games and, as I say, Earth Unplugged, which I'll come on to a little bit more and more. The thing I'm trying to get on this one is that for content to work for people, you need to be where that audience you want to engage with are. So they're not, TV and radio aren't the two outlets anymore. And I'm sure you all know that, but I think it's important to realise that that's not the only place where you can put your content. But in realising that, you also need to know who is in those spaces and who you're actually trying to target when you're sending your information or your films out there. There's little point in trying to reach you know, young people by putting a radio piece out on Radio 4. Sorry, Julian, but I'm just saying that. Equally, there's not an awful lot of point in trying to get high density science and really complex thoughts across in bite-sized YouTube form, unless you can come up with something really, really creative to make it work. So if we move on...
There's a question just down there.
Sorry, yeah?
Yeah, I guess, what's been the implications of this on the nature of the storytelling?
On the nature of the storytelling, I think storytelling can come in a number of ways. If actually, if we move onto the next slide there, on the nature of storytelling, what it does is it focuses your mind onto who you're actually trying to tell the story to. And I agree that story is absolutely vital, but it's important to realise who you're telling the story to and what they're going to try and expect from that. You know, I was just coming on to that in a way. You know, if you're on YouTube, you're up against content potentially like somebody's cat playing a piano that gets 24 million views, or a South Korean dancer with a really weird horse dance getting 1 billion views. Now, you know, we'd all kill for sort of audiences that size, but that's what you're up against, and you're in a space where they are only one click away from you on YouTube. So you've got to try and find out what it is that makes that content work. And I think I'm trying to remember my thing here. I will come back to YouTube a little bit later on about what we did. But one of my favourite things is that animation can help you do that. Now, this is not I don't know whether anybody has seen this clip, and it might be worth watching. This is done really well on YouTube, and I contacted them originally when we were starting the YouTube channel up to say, could you do some animation for us? Turns out it's expensive, but this animation was done by a graphics company wanting to get graphics work. But I think it's very good YouTube content, and I think it does send a message, and really interesting storytelling in animation. It'd be worth playing this wildebeest clip right now. You might have to click full screen on that, and sound is quite useful. That's, if you just minimise that screen now, and that goes back to the, if you, sure, yeah, they're down there. That, I think, is one of my personal favourite bits of natural history content. It sends a really, it's not sending a message, it's quite funny. I've watched wildebeest do that, and that's exactly what wildebeest are like. But that's prime YouTube content. It tells a story, it's telling it using animation, it's telling it with a bit of humour, and it's telling it in 1 minute, pretty much dead. From that point of view. That's the type of snackable content that the audience on YouTube are looking for, looking to share. Again, that's another example of what YouTube people do. It's a community. They want to share it. There's not an awful lot of depth you can get out of that, but as a way of pulling people, like I said earlier, to other messages, a piece of content like that can be snapped up, grabbed, and can help lead you, because at the end of that, which they didn't do, but one of the things you're able to do on YouTube yourself in your own clips is at the end of a clip, put a link actually on the screen to take them somewhere else, irrespective of what YouTube do. So that's a facility that's on the YouTube channel. That's like guiding somebody at the end of a BBC One show, rather than saying on BBC Two now and expecting to literally have a link that they can push and it will take you to BBC Two or a different piece of content. So knowing who your audiences are is absolutely critical, and where that audience is in order to tell the stories they'll be expecting there, and making sure you get the right tone for it. And I think that's the point I was trying to make from the challenges ahead. Has much been talked about Project Wild Thing here over the past few days? Hardly anything. Sorry, are you something to do with it?
Yes.
Excellent. That's good, because I didn't know this. The reason I did this, I was putting this together the other day, and it will lead me on to my next slide. I realise I'm sort of going on. There are 2 trailers here for Project Wild Thing, and I'd just like you to see, and this leads me on to the sort of quality and content and style of what you're trying to reach, and how things can be improved. The other thing about television is that we improve things on a yearly, maybe 2-yearly basis. You know, the next big blue chip natural history show will be more ambitious than the last blue chip natural history show. But you'll only notice that in 2 years' time when it comes out. Things online and storytelling and how you use the content that you've created can change one day to the next. And this surprised me a little bit. So if we just play the first one, this first Project Wild Thing trailer started in June, if I remember rightly.
I'm
July.
David Bond. I'm a father.
Yeah, we are going to go outside.
I can't persuade my children to go outside. Across the Western world, children spend less and less time outdoors. This has been strongly linked to a sharp decline in children's well-being. I've just got a new job. I'm the marketing director of Nature. I've given myself 2 months to develop and launch a nature marketing campaign to get children, including my children, outside. Can you imagine a nature ad on here? It'd be absolutely awesome. Modern marketing is a mighty persuader. I want to use it to sell the outdoors.
The product that you have called Nature is so astonishing. All you have to say is, look, it should be an easy run in a way.
So what do you think of when you think of nature?
Dull. Outdoors doesn't really look like that.
If you get it right.
Do you have the budget to be able to compete with the global players?
They've just given us hundreds of thousands of pounds worth of advertising for free.
Get into nature.
It's an advert for Nature. Weird.
Change the rules, do something different.
Going outside is one of the great anti-capitalist manoeuvres you can do.
Shambhala, I salute you. Already got 21 pledges. Give me a hug.
Please can you sign our pledge at projectwildthing.com.
I can't believe I just did that.
We've just had our 1,000 pledge.
So that was posted, I believe, in July 2013. And I'm going to say, I think that's great. I think it's a really great bit of storytelling. I think it does, in 1 minute 50, it sets up everything you need to know about the project. It's hinged around one man and a mission and his aims to go and do things. It tells you what he's going to do. It sets everything up and really engages you. You want to know more after seeing that. Then I came across the trailer that's actually on the website at the moment, which is effectively the same thing, and it's using much of the same shots, but I'd argue it's even better than that one in July. And I think it's probably down to the storytelling that's in it, and also possibly down to the production values that are also added into it. There's a few little tweaks. So I think it's just worth clicking on that and showing and watching the difference, and just sort of maybe having a think yourself, what are the key differences? And maybe you'll have a different opinion to me as to which one's better. I don't know.
I'm David Bond. As a child, I was happiest playing outdoors. When I got back from school, I'd throw down my books and go straight out to play. My children don't do that.
Technology is turning us into glassy-eyed zombies.
My children's generation is going to be the first in history to have a lower life expectancy than their parents.
How much do you love the telly?
100 billion. It's so relaxing.
Modern marketing is a mighty persuader.
Go compare, go compare.
I want to use it to sell the ultimate free wonder product, the outdoors.
Take your children outdoors.
But will anyone buy it?
So what do you think of when you think of nature?
Dangerous outside.
There's a poo there.
Oh,
People have their dogs off the leash there, and a lot of people get like mauled to death.
Yeah, that's interesting.
We sell every product under the sun. Now our job is to sell the sun itself.
You're guaranteed to love nature or your money back. There is no money, so surely I can say that.
Oh, he's tickling! He's tickling!
Kissing a frog, that's just out. That's just not happening.
You're not going to kiss a frog?
It's
What about
unhygienic.
pick up a frog?
That is brilliant.
It's not the kids that don't want to put their hands in the mud or jump in the pond. It's the adults that have said no.
What would happen if they caught you playing ball games?
I think we'll just get an Asbo.
You get an Asbo. Play freely. Go outside into the green. Oh,
That's just too much nature.
Stop buying iPads. Take your children outdoors. You've bought enough iPads now.
So, what I think is interesting about that is that, you know, we used to, in television, used to go, oh, well, we'll make the film and build it and they will come type of mentality. In the space of what was effectively less than 6 months, you've got two different trailers still coexisting in the internet world, both telling the same sort of story, effectively the same story. But I argue that the latter one is better. And I think, for me, the reason that works is that whilst you do really connect with David Bond in this one, and you know his aims and his objectives, they've hyped it up to the max in the next one. He's almost been given the Louis Theroux treatment of that. They've taken snippets and they've told the story, and they've made it more personalised. It's very much the I, my children, so it's much more about him, his quest, which is what, I haven't seen Project Wild Thing, I'm afraid, so I will hopefully get to see it. But I think in storytelling terms, you can see the difference. Well, hopefully you can see that. Did anybody see the difference? Yeah? Who preferred the first one? Okay, a handful of you. And who preferred the second one? I'm assuming the rest of you preferred the second one. Okay, that's good. And that goes to show that you don't have to wait till everything is 100% perfect. If you've got that sort of story, you've got the structure that's there, and you've got material, get it out there, because you can iterate it over time. That's what television never really has a chance to do. But you can change, you can modify your stuff, see how it's working, see what the audiences are liking from the statistics that you can get back on the likes of YouTube, and change it. Use the same content that you've got, but change it to affect the audience that you're looking for. I don't have the luxury of doing that, particularly on the One Show. I'd love to. Yes, please do.
It's very simple. It was about chronology and experience. So the first one was when we were rushing to finish the film for its launch at the Sheffield Film Festival, DocFest in June. So it was simply put together very, very quickly. But the second one was as a result of watching audiences interact with the film, seeing what had resonance, and making it snappier. The other thing was that we didn't want it to be too good in the first instance because you couldn't see the film, and now you actually can.
Okay.
So the distance between seeing that trailer, the second one, and actually seeing the film can be instantaneous.
Of course, of course. It's all exceptional reasons, but I think the first one is still very good, and from a story structure and from what it's actually trying to tell you, it does fundamentally do the same thing as the second one. And I think that's the thing. It's a story structure point of view, and whoever edited it and whoever came obviously understands that. And I don't know. Was the same person editing the first and the second one? So you know, a good editor with a good eye and a good director with a good eye for story structure can really affect the outcomes of stuff. But both of which are brilliant. And that brings me on. You know, the types of people we're talking about. What resources you need to make this type of story, this type of content, it can be anything from a single crew through to lots of people. If we just move on to the next slide, we have got an explosion in ways of gathering content. You saw Chadden earlier on using probably what was his point and shoot. I don't think he even had an iPhone at the time. That's when Frozen Planet was filming, so it would have been just an SLR. You know, I've just given you a range of things that we've got up here that we'll use, that I have personally used on one show, ironically. So I've used anything from the absolute top end 4K cameras, the Reds and the Arri Alexas that are here, through to a GoPro Hero. We've used 5D Mark IIIs, Mark IIs, and the likes, and FCP online editing, offline editing, and various other offline editing. Don't get hung up on the types of content you can gather from different cameras. It's horses for courses. Obviously, if you're going to use a Red for high-speed filming, then you're in high-end production. But you might need that sometimes to tell the tale that you want to tell. You can't do everything on a GoPro camera, but you can do a lot of things on a GoPro camera. But whatever you do, don't forget about sound, because I think there's something else in that those two trailers I've just played you there, is that the sound mix on the second one, I think, is significantly better, and probably you had significantly more time, and understandably so. But sound has such an important feature to be had in short form filmmaking, and often the first thing to get lost when you're making films short form is crew and kit. And the first person out of the crew thing, if you're making video content, is the sound man or somebody who knows anything to do with microphones, which is fine if you never ever want to have sound on it. But if you're expecting somebody to make a really important point, then you do absolutely need to hear them. And it's why on the one show, I sort of try desperately to make sure that we can contain and still have sound personnel with us when we go out and film them, because I think it's critical to get your message across. There's no point having it mumbled in the background. If we move on, I'm just going to, having done the last year of doing one show and YouTube, I've got a really, going back to what I said at the start, we've got a very different demographic, very different audience that we were trying to reach. And I won't deny, it was a hell of a struggle to start off with on YouTube, because what was natural history content or short form content that we were making going to look like for a YouTube audience? So there's some few clips here, and I don't necessarily need to play all of them at all time. So I did 6 months on YouTube, and none of these clips that I'll show you, apart from the Spa one, are ones that I was involved with. And I've done the last year on the One Show. And the One Show is probably what everybody would probably think of in terms of short form content from a TV point of view. They are 4.5-minute items that are played between 7 and 7:30. Does anybody watch the One Show? Everybody without kids, I suspect, because it's at 7 o'clock and nobody has an awful lot of chance to watch that. The One Show is a really interesting beast in terms of a TV show. It gathers a huge audience, sometimes up to 4.5 million people. It was designed deliberately by the BBC to carry over the large audiences that they get for regional television news at 6:30 into the sort of soap time at 7:30 and 8 o'clock. Because what they'd realised is that some of the shows prior to the One Show ever being commissioned, some of the shows did really well and it carried the audience through. Some of the shows didn't do very well and they lost their audience. And the One Show is that sort of, it is nationwide for a modern mass. It has all manner of things on it. It has people discussing knife crime. It has David Dimbleby talking about painting, and it has wildlife on it as well. It's not the natural home for wildlife, and the audience watching that programme, going back to audiences, are not tuning in just for wildlife. They're there, and wildlife is a part of it. So when we make films for them, we have to fit their style. But it's important for the natural history in it to be part of it, because it is an outlet for natural history. It gives us, this next coming year, we've got 40 films to make. And they're 40 films where we can actually properly delve into science sometimes. We've only got 4.5 minutes to tell the story, but we can tell stories that would never be given airtime on a blue chip natural history show where we've got scientists talk out. So we work closely with partners, the RSPB, BTO, conservancy trusts, national trust, everybody who's got an interesting story to tell, we can try and tell those stories for the one show audience. And the good thing about that now is that in the past, people used to ask us if they could have DVDs and the likes. And we'd be able to send a DVD, but we'd be able to say, oh, well, you can't do anything with it. You can watch it yourself and possibly play it to somebody. But the BBC's own internal web pages and the BBC Clips finally has caught up with the modern age and are now allowing you to embed those films on your own web pages. So when we're making films for One Show now, which is a delight to me, it's people I'm working with. We did a film on bee flies using an expert from the Natural History Museum. And we were able to say to her, look, once the film's finished, you can embed that on the Natural History Unit's page perfectly happily, and you can play it and it'll be there forever. So it's a film that could bolster your web presence, and we're telling a great story. So we can almost offer something back now to the UK community who are making those things. So, but we do tackle environmental things on the One Show, but they all have a One Show feel to them. So the One Show has a family of presenters. Mike Dilger, Miranda Kristofnikov, George McGavin. I was almost calling him Gavin then, but George McGavin are the three natural history wildlife presenters for the One Show. And the One Show got to know them over the 7 years, and they like them, and they know what sort of thing to expect from them. But when we come to doing a sciencey piece or an environmental piece, we sort of need to bring something One Showy to it. So we were commissioned to make a film about the acidification of the River Avon in mid-Wales. You know, I can't imagine anybody else making a film about that really, but we were commissioned, and I think the commissioners were sort of seduced by pictures of salmon on the pitching document that we put in there. When we came around to writing the script, we have to go through a process of writing the script, passing it on to the commissioners, let them have a look at it. And the first draft was, that's a bit dry, can you add something to it? And it was then I started to realise that the One Show needs something to add to it. So we talked to the chemistry department at Bristol University. They passed us some pH solution and gave us some tips on how to use it. So we could bring something really visual. The One Show is a very visual show. So we were able to bring something visual to it. I don't think I've got time to show all of those, but we try and do it. Let me show a clip. Hopefully if you click on Aquafresh, we'll watch the first, say, minute of it. It won't get to the bits. Oh, sorry, it's the one above it. Sorry, that's a different one. Stop that. Here we go. So these are 4.5 minute items maximum, but we've got to tell quite a lot of information. So it's important storytelling-wise to set up the conceit to start off with.
The River Avon in mid-Wales is a major tributary of the Wye, one of Britain's most spectacular areas of outstanding natural beauty, and a designated site of special scientific interest. It's picture perfect, but all is not quite what it seems.
Upland streams like this, which feed the River Avon, are usually brimming with life. If I disturb the bottom, I should catch all manner of invertebrates like aquatic insects and crustacea. But just looking inside here, it's completely empty, which means, to all intents and purposes, this watercourse is biologically dead.
The problem lies in the quality of the water itself, and it's something Stephen Marsh-Smith of the Wye and Usk Foundation has been monitoring and trying to control for the last 10 years.
What's the problem?
It's acidity, and the effect of this is to kill off virtually all life in the stream.
Very little can survive in a pH lower than 5.
What are we talking here?
About 4.2. Many hundreds of thousands of times more acidic than pure water. Getting close to sort of lemon juice or vinegar.
That's astonishing.
The acidification stems from the combined effects of acid rain and the draining of natural wetlands to make way for commercial forestry.
This used to be a huge bog here, but it's been drained just for the purpose of planting more trees.
Lose the wetland and you lose a giant natural sponge that filters rainwater gently back into the river.
What I think the One Show has taught me more than anything else is a relentless look at what's actually important in telling the story that you're going to tell and setting the problem up at the very start and working out how you're going to make a solution to it. Because we've got 4.5 minutes, and as I said, we don't have an audience that are specifically natural history driven. So we cannot take anything for read about their understanding of the natural world. And you'll note in that interview with Stephen Marsh-Smith, he's cut in probably 2 or 3 times at least by a line of voiceover from Mike that sets up what he's going to say next. You know, a pH of 5. There's a line in there that sets up his next line. It'd be lovely to think that every one of your contributors in the entire world would say things in a sort of small, succinct, very TV or short content friendly way. But they won't. Invariably, the people we're talking to know their onions and have known their onions for many, many years. And no matter how good Mike is on the day interviewing them, will never necessarily get the information out. So you need an editorial eye when you come back to cutting those down to make sure that you are holding the audience's hand from a one show's point of view to explain the problem, reiterate the problem, and you know, and sound again's played a part there. Music, that we've given the sense of this is what you're supposed to be thinking. I'm not trying to tell the audience, but you need to give them help in that sort of sense. We then go on to reveal that there's been a solution to this problem, which involves calcium carbonate and a massive digger and dumping a load of calcium carbonate into the river. And then at the end of it, you want a resolution. At the end of it, Mike is further downstream, doing the same netting that he'd done at the top of the film that you saw there, collecting a load of caddisfly larvae and everything, proving that the thing that we've just seen has worked. You know, again, that was the one show's request. We had to prove, we had to show a difference in the river. And it's very difficult because where we were putting the stuff in wasn't where you were going to see the difference. So we had to make the story plod downriver to an area where it had been affected. And we're there at a time of year where there were no salmon. So I had to use some salmon footage that was shot in the Avon a couple of years ago to illustrate that they are coming back and tell the truth that they were coming back in sort of late autumn to spawn. But all in the case of 4.5 minutes. It's quite a sciencey thing, really, for the one show. But the great thing is I can now leave that online for Stephen Marsh-Smith and the people who are doing that great work up in mid-Wales to have that on their website, so they can use that clip. So thankfully, the days of it being, you know, it's blink and you miss it type territory and there's nowhere else to get it, and iPlayer are only giving you 7 days to watch it, because this is a UK production, I can leave this online in clip form, in its whole program form, and leave it up there forever so that people can share it and use it about. So that for me is a real change for how the BBC, particularly for the BBC's UK content, can work. If we can go back to the main slide. Another brief example of that is, if I'll just show you a little bit of George McGavin. This was a film about a guy who who's been monitoring 1 square metre of his garden for 15 years. And counting everything that's in it. Now, we wrote the first draft script for this, and we got the commissioner came back to us again and said, "You need to bring something to it."
It's easy to forget what a wild place Britain is. But fascinating wildlife encounters can happen right on your own doorstep, and often it's just about taking a closer look. Ecologist Patrick Roper has spent the last decade taking a very close look at the wildlife in his garden, but not his whole garden. 1 square metre of it. Patrick needed a small area to do a short-term study while working for his local biodiversity centre. 10 years on, and he's still hooked.
Well, I've recorded about 1,500 species, some of which still remain. 1,500
in this little. I mean, that is quite impressive.
I've seen a fox run right the way through there, chasing a cat that had a rabbit. We've had lizards and toads come into the area. We have a wonderful variety of small insects. We get butterflies going through, and wood lice and things like that. There's a lovely little moth. There are some about at the moment, and they party together in buttercup flowers. It's fascinating. You get stuck here, you know, you can't leave it.
It's an addiction, isn't it?
It is, yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Small it may be, but the square metre's got a mixture of habitats, lovingly named 1 litre pond, gingerbread refuge, and pitfall rock, which help make it such a wildlife hotspot. Right, Patrick, I've got a nice little beetle larva here. Look at that. It's actually trying to sink its jaws into my finger now. If I was a small insect, that's the last thing I would want to see. In fact, it probably would be the last thing I'd see. But it's not the only predator prowling the square meter.
Never mind about the lions
Can we
on the
pause
sound
that?
betting. You can watch them in
There,
action
thank
here.
you.
This
So,
tiny
what the one showed, you know, again, another potentially dry subject for a one-show audience. We've got this bloke who's been watching 1 square metre of his garden for the last 15 years, and we're going to make a film about him. Again, probably seduced by the pictures that were on the pitching document to start off with. They did commission it, but that's the least of our troubles. It's writing the script and making that work. So again, we wrote a script, we passed it through to the one show, and they liked it, but they said, you've got to bring something to it. George has got to bring something to it. Can you do it? So we racked our brains, and we ended up putting out a number of camera traps that we borrowed from one of the expeditions teams in his garden. Because what the one show wanted to do was add to his tally, make it seem like the one show had added something, added value to this guy's work. So we threw 8 camera traps at his square metre, and also borrowed one of the endoscopic cameras that we have, and did actually add an animal to his thing, the white-blind woodlouse that lives in ant nests underground, and we probed in there, we found it, and revealed it. And the one show loved that then, because we'd actually added something to this guy. He loved it as well. He wanted to keep our equipment, but we told him he couldn't. But again, that's and the style of shooting that as well. The other thing was that could have been incredibly dry. We could have had an interview on a guy on the thing, and then a shot of the square meter. We took a jib for that. We took a track with a 5D to make those track shots there. We took a sort of endoscopic lens to allow us to do some moves over the top. It all adds visual flair to the one show's piece that makes it more engaging for that audience. So it's important, you know, that's a relatively dry subject, but it was made a one-show film by a mixture of us bringing a really charismatic presenter to it, but also in the style of the way we were shooting it and the music that we're using. But these are 4.5-minute things. These are and they contain lots of information, lots of facts. The one show love a fact, they love a pub fact. If I hear the word pub fact one more time, I might shoot myself, because everybody loves a pub fact. But that's the type of thing that the audience on the one show are expecting, and we've been really successful this year, thankfully. We had some great directors who've worked on it, and we've delivered some films I'm really, really proud of. YouTube is a completely different kettle of fish, and if we just go back to the main thing here. So when we started YouTube, I had this sort of thought that style and it's the natural history in it, we've got to project our thing. So we filmed a thing called The Bone Collector, and I'll just show you the first 20 seconds of that, 30 seconds of that. This is... here we go. Hopefully it'll play. Oh, hello.
In terms of skeletons in my house, I've got a whole horse skeleton, I've got a mole skeleton, an armadillo, an otter, buzzard, and a monkey, and a Chinese water deer skeleton, and 2 sheep skeletons. I do have a lot of skulls, dogs, cats, grey seals, common seals, goats, sheep, wallabies, badgers, otters, foxes, bat, frogs, primates, hedgehogs, rats, mice, shrews. Yeah, that's pretty much the top of my head. I'm Ben Garrett, and I'm a primatologist working in primate evolution, studying for a PhD at the moment. My passion, though, is skeletons. I started when I was 10. I was a very strange child. I'm not really...
When we did that, one of the first things we did for this original channel for YouTube, I was really proud of it, and I still am really proud of that film. It looks great. It was shot entirely on a 5D stills camera, and it was really good. But it wasn't the YouTube audience. I think it's had about 2,000 hits, 3,000 hits, if that. If we go back to the page, what YouTube, we realised after a while, and I say nothing to do with me, I've been on the one show whilst this is, but the guys who carried it on did a tremendous job. And YouTube is a social media video platform. They expect, the audience of the YouTube platform expect to be able to be involved with you, and they want things turned around for them. They can comment underneath it, they can talk, they want to see them reflected. So we'd gone to town on that, made a lovely little video of the thing, and this one, Tornadoes Suck, is another film, and this was done probably on a 5D as well, but if you watch just the first 10 seconds of this, and I'll give you a bit of background to this as well.
So, as a foreign language audio CD announcer, what kind...
Buenos dias, me llamo Brad.
Hi, I'm Sam. Have you ever considered how much a tornado sucks? Now, I don't mean sucks as in is bad. Obviously, tornadoes tend to be a little bit rubbish. I mean, how much suction do they have? Tornadoes can form in a few ways, but one of the more common is due to unstable air and wind shear, when two layers of air are moving at different speeds and maybe different directions. Imagine if air at the surface is travelling at 20 kilometers an hour south and air at high altitude is travelling at 60 kilometers an hour west. Those different wind speeds will create a sort of layer that tends to spiral and vortex in the middle. And all you need then is a bit of updraft or downdraft at one end before that spiralling vortex becomes vertical and forms a tornado. But 60 kilometers an hour isn't that fast in terms of tornado speeds. In this wind booth, I'm going to experience speeds.
Was a researcher I brought onto YouTube. And in fact, everything on the original YouTube channel now is pretty much presented by the team that make the content. And it feels like almost a YouTube tradition now. He doesn't want to be a presenter. He's been a science communicator. He's worked at an aquarium around the UK doing talks and stuff like that. But the team have all been thrown in front of the camera. The opening lines, look, have you ever wondered? They're talking much more directly to the audience because that YouTube experience is one-to-one. It's very much still, even though you can watch it on your TV, the vast majority of YouTube is viewed online and on your laptop. So it gives you that sort of sense that you're right there and you want to be able to communicate them with them. And so employing a presenter to come in once a week and make a load of shows is almost impossible because they can't respond to it. So the best people to make those videos are the people who are part of the team, making it, understand it, almost organically grow that channel on YouTube, which is where they are. So both researchers, the producer, the APs, all host bits of it so they can make something very quick turnaround and react. So they can react and put up videos like this when something major happens of international significance. If there's a big tornado that's going on, they can make a tornado video using our archive and a story very quickly so that it's there, so that when people are Googling tornado, your video comes up because it's all about getting people hits on there. So a very different style. I think that lasts 3.5 minutes, but that doesn't have a break in the slightest. That's never going to break. Also, important for YouTube people is collaborations. The BBC, we do co-productions. That's what we do. We work with Discovery and Animal Planet. We rarely do something that is increasingly growing online is collaborations. And this goes back to what I was saying about working out where your audience are and how you're going to get them and how you're going to get audiences to you. So, YouTube or most of the video sharing sites have this working together ethos, which is almost alien to big broadcasting corporations. It was practically impossible for us to try and work out how to do. The idea being that you share your content. You actually work with somebody else. So Red Bull, they like doing extreme things with sport. And they've got quite a lot of people that watch their things. We wanted to do something with them. They approached, again, nothing to do with me, but they managed to work a way where we could work together and produce this, which is high production value stuff for YouTube. If you just play a few seconds of this, I won't play all of it.
Everything about him is evolved to do one thing really, which is to go very fast. But it's not going to be easy for him trying to catch G on the bike.
It's going to be hard to concentrate with this falcon chasing me down the hill. My advantage is going to be I'm going to be riding fast downhill. There's jumps, there's drops, there's turns, changing direction, and hopefully I'm going to be able to stay ahead of the bird and keep away from it.
So this is going to be the ultimate experiment between man and bird.
All these were available online, and that goes on for 3.5 minutes. That's got every camera in the world thrown at it. It really does. I think they had 3 Reds, about 12 GoPros, a hexacopter to fly aerials. They had a camera, obviously, on the Peregrine and the likes. But that was done in conjunction with Red Bull. They thought it was quite cool, so they worked with the Red Bull rider, who's sponsored by Red Bull. the sort of deal was, I think, in the end, that that this clip would coexist on the Red Bull site, and the behind the scenes of this clip and how it was done and what it would do would exist on the BBC's original YouTube channel, with cross-promoting links at the end of each clip, so that if you stumbled across the behind-the-scenes thing first, you would go onto you would be able to click through and see the actual clip. If you stumbled on this first, at the end of it, you would be directed to go back and watch the behind-the-scenes. All designed to drive traffic between two YouTube channels, sharing a sort of common purpose. And this is how that generation works. So working with partners, looking for areas where you can share things. If you want to reach an audience that is, wearing Jack Will's clothing and various other, if that's the audience you want to do, find out where they are. Google will be able to help you. Various other, being a BBC person, other search engines are available. You can find this information out and be with those people to get your information there, because they will equally want potentially to access yours as well. How long have we got? About 2 minutes?
Yes.
Right. Okay. I will take a few questions. I just thought it'd be interesting in terms of storytelling. If you go to the last slide, I'm sorry, I've banged on too much. If we go on to the last slide on here, I followed a guy called Chris Riley, who I follow on Twitter. You may or may not know Chris Riley. Chris Riley is a director, science communicator, and directed In the Shadow of the Moon, the interviews with all of the still living people who landed on the moon. Fantastic storyteller. And I went to a behind-the-scenes thing. He tweeted this: the finest piece of 60-second storytelling I've seen in a long time. And if you haven't seen it, I think I sort of tend to agree. If we just watch this, this is a minute, and I think it's great storytelling. It is an advert, but you can learn a lot from adverts.
Dedication. Loyalty.
You're getting better at this, yeah. Next week, buddy.
Friendship. The choices we make reveal the true nature of our character.
Thanks. I think that's a really nice piece of storytelling. It is an advert, as I say, but I agree with Chris on that one. It gives you a surprise. It gives you it's visually good, but it gives you a surprise. You're thinking one thing, and then it's revealed to be another thing, but it's playing on your emotions, and that ultimately is one of the best ways, as you all know, to get a message across. I'm going to shut up now. If anybody has any vague questions, please feel free to ask. I'm sorry, I've gone on too long.
Yeah, no, lots of really nice tips there and ideas. Thank you very much, Colin. We've got we're swapping over, well, the next session will start at 25 past. We'll just take maybe a couple of questions before people grab some tea and coffee and switch between the sessions. Has anybody got anything?
Yeah. With advertising on YouTube. So in the same way that there's commercial sides to the BBC, as you know. The YouTube original channel was very much a complete breakout from the norm. YouTube commissioned from BBC Worldwide a channel called Earth Unplugged, and the deal was we would supply 17 hours worth of content, which would be commercialised, so there would be adverts, as you saw in front of that sort of piece there. In the same way that TV shows are sold to the States, and there are adverts in that sort of sense. The difficulty was, and I think originally the BBC would have preferred that content to have been geo-locked, so that the content was free to view in the UK and had advertising, but Google were not having any of that. And I think, to a degree, the BBC has to get real on that when you're working in these new platforms. That's the way that they're making money, and they paid and commissioned it from there. And we just have to I don't want to lose our public service, and I'm not the right person to be talking about that, but I do think that, you know, we've got to evolve with the times as these platforms evolve if we're going to be in the places where we want to reach and get that audience. We could say we're never going to do anything on YouTube, but that would be insane, because the people are watching content there, and if we want to get our message out and we want to celebrate nature, we need to be there as well as on television, as well as on radio, as well as on Twitter. So, you know, we've got to be a little bit more sensible about how we take that on board.
Thank you. One more question, anybody?
I think I've bored them enough. Excellent.
Excellent. Thank you very much,
Cool.
Colin.
Thanks very much.
Round of applause. Thanks.